The Ukrainian Defense Forces have shot down a Russian A-50 aircraft using a Patriot surface-to-air missile system, the U.S. Army has said. On January 14, 2024, the Ukrainian Armed Forces destroyed Russian long-range radar detection aircraft over the Sea of Azov for the first time. This aircraft is referred to as flying radar. It can track activity both in the air and on the ground, and unlike ground-based locators, it can see much more. The loss of two A-50s in January and February 2024 is one of the largest losses in the history of Russian aviation.
They have probably about a Patriot battalion operating in Ukraine right now. Some of it's being used to protect static sites and critical national infrastructure. Others are being moved around and doing some really historic things that I haven't seen in 22 years of being an air defender.
The command and control centers, weapons storage sites and other military facilities that Russia is using for its offensive in Kharkiv region are legitimate targets for strikes with American weapons, and it doesn't matter whether they are in Ukraine or on the Federation territory. The US and several other NATO member states have allowed the Ukrainian Defense Forces to use short-range MLRS missiles and artillery to hit targets on Russian territory. And as the White House said, this decision has frozen attempts by the Russian army to advance in the Kharkiv region.
It didn't make sense not to allow the Ukrainians to fire across that border to hit Russian guns and emplacements that were firing at the Ukrainians. So the president authorized that. The Ukrainians have carried out that authorization on the battlefield. And one thing I will point out is that the momentum of that operation in Kharkiv has stalled out. Now, Kharkiv is still under threat, but the Russians have not been able to make material progress on the ground in recent days in that area.
At the same time, Washington's policy regarding the ban on the use of long-range ATACMS missiles for strikes inside Russia has not yet changed.
They're authorized to be used in proximity to the border when they're being used on the other side of the border to attack specific targets in Ukraine. We're not talking about giving them weapons to strike Moscow, to strike the Kremlin, to strike just across the border where they're receiving significant fire from conventional weapons used by the Russians to go into Ukraine to kill Ukrainians.
Partial permission for the Ukrainian armed forces to strike the territory of the Russian Federation with American weapons is not enough, U.S. House of Representatives Speaker Mike Johnson said. In his words, Washington should stop micromanaging the military effort in Ukraine. The Republican congressman called on the Pentagon to lift all bans on Kyiv's use of ATACMS and sent a letter to United States Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin. Military analysts also agree with the opinion of some U.S. parliamentarians.
The Biden administration's limited policy change permitting Ukraine to use U.S.-provided weapons to strike some Russian military targets in a small area within Russian territory has reduced the size of Russia's ground sanctuary by only 16% at maximum. U.S. policy still preserves at minimum 84% of Russia's ground sanctuary by shelling military targets in range of ATACMS, from a post of the Institute for the Study of War on social network X.
From a military point of view, if the target is deep inside Russian territory, Ukraine should hit it, the head of the NATO Military Committee, Admiral Rob Bauer, said. The aggressor country produces fuel, transport, weapons, and all this allows it to continue the war against Ukraine. Therefore, he said, strikes on the Federation's territory are not only legal but also logical. In total, over a dozen states have confirmed Ukraine's right to strike Russia using their weapons. Reported by Serhiy Kulas, Valeriya Nekapelova, UATV News.